When China ended its one-child policy 3 years ago, there was hope couples would have a second child to help slow the pace of an aging society. But the move is not working, reports London-based China analyst Yuan Wu. The declining birth rate is now one of the most talked about topics across China, and there's a real sense of crisis. After decades spent trying to curb the population, state propaganda slogans, and exhort couples to have children for the country, prompting criticism on social media that government policy is intrusive and insensitive. Measures now being discussed range from extending maternity leave to encouraging people to have a second child, with straight cash incentives or tax breaks. Some are even calling for limits on the number of children to be abandoned altogether, aimed at curbing population growth. China's one-child rule was introduced in 1979, a year after economic reforms. The policy was strictly enforced for most people. Those caught violating the policy could be fined, lose their jobs, or face forced abortions and sterilization. But the fertility rate had already gone into steep decline a decade earlier. 5 years China benefited from demographic dividends. Its massive population, almost a fifth of the world's, provided plenty of manpower and manageable numbers of very young and old people to fuel the country's rapid economic rise. Now, all that is disappearing. First, in order for China to continue its economic development and support its aged, the population needs to grow rather than decline. The ending of the one-child policy in 2015 was meant to boost this. But the data suggests the opposite. Despite the freedom to do so now, young people do not seem to want more children. According to China's National Statistics Bureau, there were 17.86 births in 2016, and the Chinese population grew by 1.31 million, with a rate of 12.95 births per 1,000 people. The fastest since 2001, but in 2017, which should have seen the full effect of the two-child policy, there were 17,230,000 births, a decrease of 613,000 compared with 2016. The birth rate stood at 12.43 per 1,000, down 0.52% from 2016. This is below even the most pessimistic forecast before the new policy was introduced. Predictions for the future look even bleaker. Not surprisingly, the looming crisis has got everyone talking. On 6 August, the Communist Party's official newspaper People's Daily devoted a whole page to the issue, including an op-ed entitled "Having children is a family matter, but also a national matter." The editorial warned that the state needed new policies to deal with the impact of the low birth rate on the economy. This prompted much coverage and debate in the media. One article in Xinhua Daily by 2 scholars from Nanjing University sparked an outcry. They suggested a birth fund be set up, to which everybody below the age of 40 contribute. If the couple were to have a second child, they could withdraw money from the fund. If not, they would have to wait until retirement. Find whether one has a child or not. Please stop targeting people's wallets, was just one of the articles in response to the idea, which has been labeled inconsiderate, unfair and unnecessary. Some urged the state to address the root cause of why young people do not want more children and try to lower the cost of raising a child, rather than penalizing people financially. China is fast becoming an aging society, as well as the birth rate falling. People now live longer. Life expectancy was 66 when the one-child policy was introduced, and it is now about 76. This will put great strain on China's economy in the decades to come. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the number of people aged 15 to 64 topped 1 billion in 2013, but has been declining steadily since, and will continue to do so. At the same time, the number of old people is growing. In 2017, China's total population stood at 139 billion, including 158 million people aged 65 and over, constituting 11.5% of the population. That's more than 1.5 times the United Nations' definition of an aging society, when 7% of the population are 65. The United Nations' 2070 revision of world population prospects forecasts that 17.1% of the Chinese population will be over 65 by 2030. This trend entails that old people are supported by fewer and fewer people of working age. According to an article by Ning Yi published on Ethan Weekly, there were 316 young people for each old person in 2011. By 2016, the age dependency ratio was down to 2. It is predicted that by 2050, it will be just 1. As in other countries with similar age ratio projections, this has huge implications for the economy, for paying pensions, and for meeting elderly care needs. Why are not people having more children? Many young people in China, who grew up during the 3 decades of strict family planning and breakneck economic development, have a different mindset from their parents. They are used to being the center of attention and enjoying much better material wealth and personal freedom. They are also marrying late, if at all, having children late, if at all, and focusing more on their own careers and happiness, a trend not confined to China. When they contemplate starting a family, one big concern is whether they can afford it. Surveys show that on average, raising a child in a city can cost more than half of a Chinese family's income. Child care places are always oversubscribed, so many have to rely on grandparents for help. And then there's the mortgage and other burdens on the family budget. In other words, to have one child is a struggle. To have another needs even more resources and support. None of the young people I talked to recently in China wanted a second child. Our generation has a tremendous burden on our shoulders. One woman, who did not want to be named for this article, told me, our aging parents, our young children, our own careers, this combined together can easily crush us. The woman, who is in her 30s, already has a 5-year-old son, but she and her husband have decided not to provide him with a sibling. Lack of child care is a big reason. So what often happens is we hire nannies to look after the baby, and ask our parents to keep an eye on the nanny. 1979 government proposal encourages all couples to have just one child. 1982 family planning becomes basic state policy. 2000 a couple can have a second child if both of them are only children. 2013 couples allowed to have a second child if one of them is an only child. 2015 and a one-child policy, and all couples are allowed to have a second child. On the other hand, some older women, already in their early 60s, were quite firm that had the one-child policy ended earlier, they would have tried for another child, even up to their late 40s. So, did the one-child policy go on for too long? And was there a robust enough national debate? Many people are now asking these questions. All censuses carried out after 1990 point to the rapid decline of the total fertility rate, the average number of children born to a woman over her lifetime in China, which is lower than the one needed as a replacement fertility rate. But there has been fierce disagreement over the true figure. For instance, a population survey in 2000 indicated the total fertility rate was an alarmingly low one.
22